Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, indeed good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Sunday of the VegfestUK Summerfest Online 2020, our first online event. And thank you very much for joining us. If you're joining us live this morning, very good to see you. Thank you for joining us. And if you are watching later, yes, there is a recording of this. It will be available from tomorrow, and the recording will be available for another 30 days. So if you want to pop back and catch this, if you haven't been able to see it in full, or you'd like your friends to see it, or you'd like to watch it again, it will be available, as will a number of other presentations from this particular panel, which is the Vegan Women's Leadership Network, hosted by Katrina Foxx. Katrina hosted a panel yesterday, the first panel with the Vegan Women's Leadership Network. It's a really interesting panel. I was lucky enough to listen to it all. Some really, really good guests. And Katrina is going to introduce now this fantastic array of panelists we have this morning. But thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Katrina Foxx.
Thank you so much, Tim, for that lovely introduction. And again, I mentioned this yesterday during the panel for the first Vegan Women's Leadership Network panel. Just thank you to VegfestUK for partnering with us and providing a platform for a diverse range of vegan women. So I'm really excited to host today's panel, which is Vegan Women Making a Difference in Business. And we've got a really wonderful collection of women from across the globe who are going to talk about their experiences and some of the issues. I just want to mention, though, this is an interactive panel. So if you're watching live, we do encourage you to join in. What you need to do is use the Q&A function on your device. If you're watching on a laptop, it's likely to be based at the bottom of your screen. But if you're on a mobile or a tablet, it could be on either side. But look out for the Q&A and just type in any questions that you have. You're welcome to do that as we go along. And I've got a few questions that I'll be asking the panel, but I will be checking in regularly to answer your questions, whatever questions you want to ask to any of our panelists. And of course, we'll have some time at the end to do that as well. So as Tim mentioned, I'm Katrina Foxx, the founder of the Vegan Women's Leadership Network, which launched very recently. We only went live last month, and it's a global ethical leadership community to help vegan women become leaders in their field. And you can find out more about that at the virtual stall that we've got here at VegfestUK, which has links to the website. But now it's my great pleasure to introduce our wonderful panelists. We have Dr. Dalal sorry, I think I might have to correct my name. Dr. Dalal Al-Khawass, I hope I said that right, who's the program director for Big Idea Ventures, which is a venture capital firm in Singapore and New York. And it's currently raising up to $50 million for its first fund, which is the New Protein Fund. And the aim of that is to invest in the best companies that are working in the alternative protein ecosystem. So very lovely to have you here, Dalal. Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
And we have got Jex Stone. Jex is an interior designer, a wellness interior designer, and the founder of Persona Abode Interiors, which is a London-based company specializing in vegan design for the benefit of people, place, and planet. Really great to have you here, Jex.
Thank you for having me.
We've also got Suzanne Curlew, also known as Curly Sue, who is a renowned vegan author, speaker and chef who recently got her own plant-based cooking show on Amazon Prime, which is fantastic. Welcome, Suzanne.
Hello, thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
And from Australia, we've got Melissa Hobbs. Melissa is the founder of The Vegan Company, which is a fashion, lifestyle and beauty digital media website. Welcome, Melissa. You might have to unmute yourself when you speak, but yeah, hi, Melissa. And also...
I wasn't on mute. Can you hear me?
That's okay. Yeah, we can now. That's great. And also from Australia, we've got Jessica Bailey, who's the founder of the Cruelty Free Shop, a vegan supermarket which has branches in both Sydney and Melbourne, as well as an e-commerce site. Hello, Jess.
Hi, Katrina. Thanks for having me.
So great to have all of you. So look, I've done a very brief introduction of all of you to give an idea of who you are, but I'd really like to kick off with just having each of you tell us about how you got here. You know, you're involved in business. Most of you are running your own business. Dalal, you're working for a VC firm. So I'd love to know, how did you get to where you are today to be working in the vegan and plant-based business space? So let's kick off with Dalal. Tell us how you've come to be where you are.
Okay, it's an interesting story. I would say it's all chance. I think, you know, I started off my career in research and academia, and, you know, I always thought I'm going to go down a very traditional route. And I come from a generation where you can't really align, let's say, your passions with what you're doing. It's kind of something you always would expect to do on the side. So I think, you know, just by coincidence, you know, being in a city like Hong Kong, which is, you know, let's say a financial sector, a financial hub, and, you know, kind of just mixing and mingling with different friends and people within my network, put me in that, you know, situation where I was offered first to become a technical advisor for medtech and life science startups. And then just from, you know, going out to dinners with friends, I met the boss of my former company in Hong Kong. When I told him, you know, I was a food scientist and I was doing due diligence for VCs and M&A boutiques, he then invited me to join him to start the first food technology accelerator. So it was just, you know, something crazy that I got sucked up into this world, and I'm so grateful that we live in a day and age where these opportunities are widely available.
Wonderful, fantastic. Well, I'm sure we'll learn more about what you're doing to help fund this space, which is absolutely fantastic. Melissa, tell us how you got into, because the vegan company is a fairly new company, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about how you got into the space.
I was a long-term vegetarian, and as part of that, I probably about 7 or 8 years ago started a charity called Meat Free Week, and we were the recipient of 2 voiceless grants, and that was really to raise awareness of factory farming. And then through the course of that, I moved, personally shifted from being vegetarian to a vegan, and I found that transition quite difficult. I always feel embarrassed to say that, but that's my truth. And I think for me, it was like, you know, what would have made it easier? Like what would have helped me transition? And I think there was a lot of information in that sort of food-based space. So the idea to create something where it's sort of a website that curated the best of, you know, whether it was boots for winter or, you know, these recipes, so it was really about this idea of going to a place that had already taken the hard work out, because I was someone that was really busy and I just found that transition hard. So that was sort of the problem that I was probably trying to solve for myself. And that's really how the vegan company came about.
Fantastic. I love that. Great. Jex, tell us about how you came, because it's really interesting. When we think of vegan or plant-based even, we think of food, and now we think of fashion and beauty. But it's really fascinating that the interior design side of things is really coming up in terms of that. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this and kind of, I guess, veganized your interior design business.
Okay, so I guess I should start with the fact that I've always had careers what have based around the environment and thinking about the future. So I was in recycling, and I was just always this eco-friendly girl, no matter where I was. And then I got into conservation, again, thinking about the future. So once I started doing interior design, I was actually heard a podcast, and this lady was talking about she just doesn't care about the environment, and she was saying, you know, it's just all about the look, and that didn't sit right with me. And I felt, okay, so how can I combine my love of the environment and people and create a better interior space what cares about not just the finished look. And so out of curiosity, I just literally Googled vegan interior design and found one lady in the States who was doing a course. She's Deborah Demare. Yeah. And I took the course and I was like, yes, this is it. It was definitely for me. It rested on, you know, easy on my conscience to create a space, which I do love aesthetics, but I wanted it to have just more meaning, and also think about the whole process from the workers through to the whole design process to the finished look. So, you know, it just completes the whole circle for me. It makes me feel better about running a business.
Oh, I love that. We can tell from your background that you're an interior designer because it just looks perfect. It looks like a magazine shoot in the back.
Oh, you should put half an hour before.
It's brilliant. No, I love that. And I love that you haven't got to sacrifice. I think that's one of the things we obviously need to get across. We don't have to sacrifice a style or look or luxury or anything that we want. You know, it can still tick all those boxes and be good for people, animals and planet, which is brilliant. So thank you very much for sharing that. Jess, tell us how you came to run the cruelty-free shop, which is a vegan line of vegan supermarkets in Australia.
Sure. So when I first became vegan back in 2000, two things struck me. One was that I spent a ridiculous amount of time reading labels at the supermarket. And the second was how many people that when I, excitedly said, I've become vegan, said, oh yeah, I'd really like to do that, but it's just too hard. And so the idea for the cruelty-free shop came to me to address those two issues, to make it easy for people to make the transition to veganism and to selfishly mean I could do my shopping without reading labels. So that was the start.
Wow, I love that. And you initially started online, I believe, and then later you opened physical
That's
stores.
right. It was just at the very early days of online stores. So it was I was doing two things that were brand new. One was hardly anyone knew what vegan meant. And the other was that hardly anyone did online shopping. So, I chose two very challenging areas to focus on, but I was probably a bit ahead of the time. Probably could have waited 10 years to launch, but hey, it's worked.
You're a pioneer. Wonderful. And now let's come to Curly Sue, Suzanne, because you're a British Jamaican chef and author and speaker. You've got your wonderful Curly Sue's Kitchen. So you're you've got your business and you're a personality, and now you've got your amazing Amazon Prime cooking show. How did you get into this?
Well, I was a vegetarian, first of all, for a number of years. And back then when I was learning how to be a vegetarian, I was struggling. So every time I found a recipe that I liked, I used to file it. Even though I was a vegetarian, I was leaning more towards veganism even then. So I collected a lot of recipes, and all the recipes happened to be, almost all of them were vegan anyway. So I looked at the collection and I thought, this actually could make a book. So it led me to write my first cookbook, because then I was struggling, because being from a background where my parents are Jamaican, so obviously I grew up eating Jamaican food, even though I was born and raised in London. The recipes I could find at the time, I didn't really like them. They weren't quite hitting the spot for me. So I used to create recipes as well. So I wrote my first book. But prior to writing my first book, I was a news anchor in America. And the television company there had said to me, would you like to come and present some of our cooking shows? And I thought, well, I don't know. And they only did vegan programs on that particular channel. It's the Seventh-day Adventist, which is a Christian channel, and they uphold vegan and vegetarianism. So I wasn't able to do it then, but once I wrote the book, I thought, oh, actually, this might be an idea to approach them and see what they say. So I emailed them and said, do you remember me? I've now written a cookbook. Maybe I could still come and present the show. And they just emailed back and said, brilliant, get on a plane. So I thought, oh, wow. But what I had to do in preparation to going to film the cooking shows is I had to make sure all my social media was all together. And I also had to make sure the book was available from Amazon and all these different things. And then I thought, actually, this is a business. So that's kind of how it evolved from there. And yeah, the rest is kind of history-ish. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow. I love that. And I love how now we'll talk a little bit, I'm going to ask you a little bit about how you got on the Amazon Prime, but let's talk a little bit about the challenges at the moment, because I hosted a panel, actually a trade panel for VegfestUK on Friday. And I did ask the businesses that question. Obviously 2020 thrown up some massive challenges in terms of lockdown, COVID-19. I mean, it's just, really just bizarre. So I'm curious, how has this situation impacted on your business, and what have you done to either survive or thrive? I'm going to start with Melissa. Because you're already online, actually. So I know a lot of businesses had to kind of pivot to online. You were already online. So yeah, tell us a bit about what the challenges have been.
At the time when it hit, it actually forced us to do more things like pick up live chats. So I suppose it was like, okay, what can we be doing more in terms of reaching an audience? And so things that we hadn't been doing, which seems so obvious now, we're just, whether it was chatting to designers, we started a section on the website called Vegans We Love. And what we found is that really lifted engagement with the audience. But I suppose that the thing I'd say about COVID is that it's brought up, I think, and this would be everywhere. I think everywhere is looking at, okay, well, our world has changed fundamentally, and what does that mean? And, you know, and Katrina, I know you and I had this conversation, but for my business partner and I, that's raised questions for us of, okay, well, where are we going? What's our direction? I won't go too much into it other than to say that COVID for us has really made us question our business model, how we work together, and what that means moving forward. So, and that potentially may not have happened had COVID not happened. So, you know, I think I'd like to think that the outcome of that will be great, but that in itself has raised challenges from a business point of view.
Right, lovely. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that for sure. Jex, how is it? Because I know with some of obviously the food businesses, they were kind of classed as essential, and you know, people, obviously everybody's got to eat, whereas interior design, people may not necessarily be thinking about it, or is that not the case? So how has it impacted your business?
Actually, it's impacted it in a good way, because people are actually thinking about home more. They're spending more time at home, and the home is serving so many more purposes than it was before. It's become our workspace, our school, you know, cooking, everything's involved there, and it's made people nitpick just a little bit more. But it's also helped people slow down, because I'm not a big fan of consumerism and just, you know, buying and buying and buying. But now, because trades haven't got the stock, people have to wait. So you've got it's more of a slower thought process. So people can consider more about wellness and consider more about what they're bringing into the home in the first place. And of course, it's easier to talk about health when, you know, this whole pandemic is about health at the end of the day. So it's a much easier conversation to have, and I don't have to push things like creating a space where it's got clean air. It's just like, okay, I need to breathe. They get it now, so it's an easier conversation. So it's great for me.
And have you found that people are still approaching you? They still want your kind of services at the moment?
Yeah, and it's more from a health perspective as well.
Brilliant. I love that. That's great. Jess, what about you? So you've got both physical stores in Sydney and Melbourne, and you've got your e-commerce. So what's been the situation? And obviously you sell vegan products, and I know you've said to me in the past, they're not necessarily health products, you know, they're vegan, you know, plant-based meats, plant-based cheeses, lots of amazing and treats and everything. So tell us a bit about how it's impacted you and what you've had to do.
It's been such an interesting time for everybody. You know, you can't predict anything from one week to the next. And the challenge has been, well, on the one hand, we've got our shop in Melbourne, which is in complete lockdown. We're classed as an essential service because chocolate's essential, of course. But, you know, we're struggling to find work for our staff to do so we can keep them on the books and keep paying them so they can survive. Whereas in Sydney, we've got the opposite problem. Our online store has gone absolutely berserk. We've, you know, nearly tripled sales overnight. And so the problem dealing with in Sydney is trying to find enough resources and scale really, really quickly without any notice. And the challenge with that is that we don't know if this is going to stop next week or next month, or maybe there's a shift and people will shop more online, and so this peak will continue. So trying to figure out whether we should be permanently scaling or temporarily scaling, and how does that look, has been really very challenging. And what we've actually decided to do is embrace this, assume that the business is going to continue to be busy. And so we're actually moving into a larger warehouse, getting some better setup so that we can maintain that level of business in the assumption that it will continue. And I guess that if it doesn't, then we just have to work really hard to market and create that business in the future.
Yeah, that's
strange
really
times indeed. So
definitely. Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I'm curious about yours because I know you stock a lot of products from outside Australia because you're a very specialist vegan supermarket. Has that side of it been impacted in terms of, have there been delays in getting certain stock?
Yeah. For the first couple of months, no, but then the supply chain disruption started to kick in. And yes, we've started to see some delays with stock coming in, but that's sort of pushed another part of our business, which is developing our own products. And so I've sort of fast tracked some of our own product development. So I've got some food technologists working on some new products now to try and, insulate us from that impact of world problems and supply problems. Yeah.
Wonderful. Brilliant. I look forward to that, seeing as I'm in the local area and one of your customers. So I'm looking forward to that. That's good. That's a bonus for me. Dalal, tell us about what's been the experience, because I know you're in a slightly different position from the others who are running their own businesses. You're in a VC firm, and we're obviously seeing some positive things coming out of the plant-based sales of plant-based meat and so on. So how has COVID-19 and the whole situation, how has that impacted you as the program director for a VC firm?
Yeah, that's a really interesting scenario. So I think all of us, were ill prepared and caught off guard what was happening. Funny story. So I was formerly based in Hong Kong, and I moved to Singapore in January, where I started New World Big Idea Ventures. And just a few weeks in, this whole the COVID-19 was starting to spread in Singapore, and we were already in a sort of a partial lockdown. And then, I think, as the year went on, I found myself being isolated for almost 2 months, in a new place, alone in an apartment or a barely furnished apartment. So I must have needed, Jex's help to kind of create that Zen atmosphere. And then, I just, and I think, something that we don't talk about enough is the mental well-being of employees, as well as, of companies, right, and how that can create a very toxic environment. So I was really happy that I addressed this issue very early on, and I asked my employer to kind of take a break and move back home, and to kind of be in the environment with my parents, with my siblings, with my pets at home, my family pets. And that really helped to kind of help us focus, and also improved my performance and creativity. And I'm very cognizant of that as the director of all the people that are working underneath me, to make sure that they have the right sort of mental well-being to prepare themselves, and also to because our work is basically working with entrepreneurs. We have to be in a sound state of mind to make sure that we can build and encourage their businesses to grow. I would say, like, on a positive note, for our sector, we haven't really been hit to that much, in the sense that investors are still ready to kind of put capital behind alternative proteins. All of our companies, are global, so we've just shifted everything towards the virtual program. I think the only challenges now is, the fun stuff where we sort of do event showcases and tasting showcases have now been challenged. But yeah, I'm happy to say that we've found a lot of great opportunities to move those events into virtual. So to give you an example, we're working with cloud kitchens, as well as distributors and catering services, to curate a virtual tasting session for all of our portfolio companies. So I think we're just all learning, step by step, like the other panelists have mentioned, and happy to say that nothing is slowing down for alternative protein.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm very glad to hear that, because I think, as Jex mentioned, people are becoming more aware of the health side of things, of their environment, and also I think that's the same with the food as well, and what we're eating. So that's great to see. Suzanne, so it's been an interesting time for you with the whole COVID-19. What did you do? Oh, I just launched a show on Amazon Prime. Tell us a little bit. So how has COVID-19 impacted you? And if you can tell us a little bit, how did the Amazon Prime show come about? How did you get it on there?
Okay, so starting with the first part of what you're asking me, I had wanted my own cooking show for a long time, but actually, let me talk about the COVID-19. The impact it's had is that I was on a book tour, because I had a book that was published in November, and the publishers had me on a book tour, which I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to all these different countries. I was doing to all these different vegan festivals, and it was really great. And obviously it came to an abrupt halt when it came to COVID-19. So what I've had to do is think, right, what else can I do? It's about moving with the waves, so to speak. Things aren't going the way you thought they were, so you kind of have to lean into where it's now going. So I had the show, the series that was supposed to be going on Amazon for ages. I'd thought of it, but I had never kind of processed. There's a process you have to go through. So when COVID-19 came, I thought, why don't I just do it now? So usually the whole process when you negotiate with the Amazon and Prime and so forth, it usually takes 4 days for the series to appear and be ready for broadcast. But because of COVID-19, it actually took 3 months because the queuing system for things just slowed right down. You know, it's obviously they've got staff who now have to work remotely and so forth. So I just thought, okay, I'll just work with them. So I worked with them, and then they came back and said, actually, there's something that you've missed. So I thought, okay, no problem, I'll fix that, and then I'll be at the same place in the queue. Nope, it went almost back to the beginning. But fortunately, then the queuing system went from 3 months to a month. So it only took a few more weeks, and then, you know, boom, there it was. And there was a campaign, promotions campaign for the series, which took off really well. VegFest News picked it up, and then once VegFest News has picked it up, then that kind of opens up a door for lots of other vegan news outlets and so forth. I did loads of interviews and stuff, so I was really pleased. So what's happened as a result of COVID-19 is I've had to think differently, think outside the box, and also think of what else can I do. So instead of going to vegan festivals to promote my book, I've had to go to different online sessions similar to something like this to talk about what it is that I do. So it's just going with the flow is really what I've had to do.
Fantastic. But your show is based partly in Jamaica. So did you have to like fly to Jamaica during COVID, like while there was lockdown, or had you already done that beforehand?
Yeah, it was filmed beforehand. Yes.
Oh, okay, good, great. Okay. I was wondering how you did that. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. So, and I just want to remind the audience, please do, just a reminder, this is an interactive panel. Please do post your own questions. Use the Q&A function. We will come to those as we go. We're not going to save them all to the end. I'm happy to come to those as we're going along. So if any burning questions come up for either any or all of our panelists, please just do type them into the Q&A section. So it's 2020. There's still far fewer women in C-suite positions in business, and also typically female founders are underfunded, or they have been. We're starting to see, I think, some shifts happening now, but still, you know, we're a fair way behind. So I'm interested in your views on this, and why it's important for women, and particularly vegan women, to be supported in business, whether that's working as an employee or running their own business. Dalal, you've worked in the sort of the corporate sector, you know, the food scientists, and now you're working with entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's really, I think when we look at it, of course, you know, there's always going to be, let's say, women's struggles with entrepreneurship and business. And then, you know, you go into kind of, you start to break it down into, of course, women of color, and then, you know, women with different ideologies and missions. And I would consider, you know, a vegan woman as part of someone who has a different ideology than the majority of the public. So I think what you typically will see, I think, you know, with a lot of different, you know, sectors, is there will be a very homogenous idea of what, you know, your employees should be, what they should look like. You know, personally, I'm a person that I always look like a different ethnicity depending on my hairstyle. I've been called Mediterranean, North Indian, Caribbean, you know, and actually I'm an Arab woman. So depending on who I speak to, and then, you know, where they think I'm from, I can already see their inherent bias. So this is something that we all have to be more aware of and cognizant of. And, you know, I would say that, you know, with investments and fundraising, you know, it's rampant with these biases. And an investor will see, let's say, a portfolio, and we'll see, like, you know, the team composition, and automatically, you know, if there are, you know, let's say a more diverse background, or let's say a name that they're not familiar with, or let's say a region where these people are based from, that will ultimately affect whether they're going to deploy capital or not. So I think this is something that we're living day in and day out. And, you know, I'm happy to say that it is becoming more of an issue, and people are waking up slowly that we have to stop this inherent bias. And we have to also make a statement that if a team is not diverse enough, if there isn't inclusivity, or let's say women representation on the board, or within, let's say, the co-founding team, that there should be a problem. It shouldn't be something that we can just tolerate and accept time and time again because it's a great idea. And at the same time, I would say that, having these biases, it also affects, how women take themselves as well. So I think, there needs to be more help and support for women, and especially vegan women, to kind of groom them into these leadership roles, give them the chances, the opportunities, and let them make mistakes. No one's perfect. And that's why, like, they are the top picks, right? When they're not getting the funding. So I'm really happy to be working in a sector where we can groom our founders, where we do accept companies that, let's say, aren't complete, that aren't the best, because we believe they have the potential to be the best. And that should be the rhetoric going forward. And I think at Big Idea Ventures as well, I'm really lucky to work with visionary men and women who have this agenda, who really want to create a more inclusive environment and invest in a broad range of entrepreneurs, global entrepreneurs with global backgrounds of ideologies, ethnicities, nationalities, religions. We have to really make sure that we can be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to come to Suzanne because I know I saw an article you were quoted in recently where you talked about how, particularly as a woman of color or just a person of color, you have to kind of work twice as hard to get noticed and, get those kind of opportunities. So I wondered, would you like to share some of your experience around that and what you would like to see change?
In terms of change, unfortunately, we have a long way to go. And I think the recent events that have happened this year with George Floyd and the whole Black Lives Matter has, for the first time for many people, helped to see what the Black community are faced with, or people of color in general are faced with when it comes to discrimination. I worked in corporate for many years and it was hard. It was really hard because people assume things, and I'll give you one example. I started in a particular organization and I was the head of the internal communications. And as soon as I came in on the first morning, I'd been told already where I was sitting. I just went to sit down and the person who was sitting next to me said, oh, I'm sorry, you can't sit there. And I said, oh, sorry, why? She says, oh, no, the PAs, they sit at the back. So I thought, okay, I'm not a PA. So I just ignored her and I thought, okay, I'll carry on sitting down. And then she kind of came up behind me and was kind of ushering me, like touching, almost pushing me on my shoulder. I said, no, you need to get up. You need to get up. I said, why? She says, no, the PAs sit at the back. And this is, Suzanne Curlew is my boss and she's starting this morning and she's sitting here. So you need to go and sit at the back. So I said to her, just so you know, I am Suzanne Curlew. And she said, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't know. What was more annoying for me is none of the PAs who were sitting at the back were Black. So why did she think I was a PA? It's really irritating because one of the things my parents always told me, educate yourself. It's a way to move away from stereotypes, to elevate yourself. If you work hard, if you study, if you climb the corporate ladder, you will do well. And what I did, I climbed the corporate ladder, hit the glass ceiling, and then I thought, this isn't it, because when you hit that glass ceiling, when I interviewed for the role of the director's role, for communications for a particular company, they couldn't tell me why I didn't have the role. Because I said, I'm willing to learn and grow and, what do I need to work on next so I can get there? They didn't have an answer. So my boss at the time, who was the HR director, he said, I'm going to be really honest with you. And if you quote me, I'll deny it. They would never put somebody who looks like you in that position. Go and look at the organogram for people in that position in this company and tell me what you see. He said, you'd be lucky if you see even one woman, let alone anybody who's of color. And he said, if you want to progress, you're going to have to leave. And that's when I thought, this is what the glass ceiling is. So what it needs to be is, you need to kind of think to yourself, who is the best person for the job? Not the best person who looks like me, not the best person who has the same accent or the same passport or the same physical abilities or orientation or any of the strands of diversity. Are they the best person for the job? And you have to be fair, because that's what I had to do for myself. I had to think, right, is this the best person for the job? I don't care what they look like. No, don't care about gender. Can they do a really good job? And when you start to think, right, am I biased because they're from Essex and I'm from Essex? Or am I biased because they're a woman or a man or whatever? Then once you start to think that way, then you will stop recruiting people or gravitating only to people who have something stereotypically in common with you. So that has been my experience. And I think what I would like people to know is we are all human beings. We all have the same color blood. It's time to think differently, and it's time to be fair to everyone. There's only one race, and that's the human race. There isn't, everything else is just politicals. We're all one race, and that's it.
So that's really interesting. I love what you've shared, Suzanne. So in that case, what are your thoughts then on affirmative action?
Affirmative action can work, but then it can go against, it can work for and against. So it depends. And it depends how you execute the affirmative action. If you look at, for example, I worked for a company where it was 97% were white male over 55. So they would need affirmative action because, boy, I mean, it's just ridiculous. So in that case, it was looking more at, you're not going to employ someone just because they're not white male and over 55, but you're going to look more as, let's be fairer and more diverse, because it can't be only those people categorized in that way who are perfect for the job. So I think it depends how you execute it, but you still have to be fair. If you have 10 people that come for the job and the person who's best for the job is a white male, then fair enough. But it's about your perception of what you think is good enough, and what are your prejudices, and are you being more stringent on the people who don't fit the look or the background that you're looking for. So affirmative action can work, but you have to be careful how you execute it, I would say.
Nice, thank you very much. Jex, I'd love to hear from you. Does any of what Dalal and Curlew Sue have said resonate with you, and what's been your experience, and particularly in the interior design industry?
Oh, definitely resonates. So outside of the industry and interior design industry, I've worked in obviously conservation and recycling, which draws men more than women, often much older than me. Definitely not black. So, I'm often, like Curlew Sue said, I'm mistaken for the secretary. And, I'm also have qualifications being an accountant. So I've always had financial roles as well, but they just don't, I'm the one holding the purse string, but they just pass it on to me. And they don't pass, just goes over their head that I actually might be in charge of something. And they look for the male and like, oh, it's only you here. And, and I get that time and time again. But with interiors, it's a little bit different because it is very populated with women, but they don't look like me again. Interior design is considered that luxury, but at the end of the day, everyone needs homes. And, at any level, whether you're, a billionaire, a lower income, your home affects you, and it needs that diverse range of designers who understand the millionaire, who understand what it's like to be in a low income, and also if you your cultural traditions and stuff like that. So I've always said it's like how a shower is designed. It's mainly driven towards people who will wash their hair every day. I'm sure Curlew Sue will understand we don't wash our hair every day. So having that overhead shower is just it's annoying. And I remember talking to someone who's actually on Netflix and who's a designer, and I said, this problem, and he was like, well, just wear a shower cap, it doesn't really matter. But it does matter, because we have showers all the time. We need that range, and we need that level of understanding from people, and it only can come if you're allowing the people who have got those voices and those ideas that you've just not thought of. You hear them and you understand, and then you consider that as well. It's all well and good listening, but you've actually got to put some action behind that listening as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Melissa and Jess, do you want to chime in on any of that, your experience? Because I know you've had different backgrounds. I know, Melissa, for example, you've come from a media background from working with Murdoch, Press News Limited, for example. Is there anything you want to say on that?
I feel, first of all, that anything I'm going to say will sound quite lightweight because they were just three incredible responses. What my background, because it was in media in Australia, was very different. It was in magazine publishing, and I suppose the contrast, and it's almost a little painful now as we move into this sort of more woke, you know, with businesses being woke and the consumers being woke, or this conscious generation. But I look back over that 20-year career, and so in magazine publishing with News Limited, it was largely women. So I worked with women, predominantly women, which was fantastic. But what wasn't fantastic is it was predominantly white women. We all looked the same. I mean, literally, we all sort of dressed the same. We looked the same. We drove the same sort of cars. I mean, it's almost cringeful. Like, you look back and go, wow, it's so obvious now. And I remember a few of us at the time would kind of go, look, what's wrong with this place? It's so Anglo. And so there was kind of an awareness back then. And I do remember when I was in a role just before I resigned as a strategic director, and I employed a woman who I won't say her name, but she was Indian, and she was wonderful. She was a wonderful strategist, and she caught so much. I had a lot of, I suppose, people in my office regularly criticizing her work, challenging her work, and you know, at the time she identified it correctly, and we still were in touch. Actually, we built a friendship, but it was racism. I mean, it really was, and it did definitely, the way her work was judged in comparison to others, you know, she was held to different standards, and she reported into me, and I feel that I was able to give her support. I ultimately left, and she left not long after I left, but it does sort of, that sort of sticks with me. Going back to your question about vegan women in business, I think that the thing with veganism for me is that we are still a minority group, and yes, we're growing. And I think, you know, because of our veganism, there's probably a fight in us, whether it's about the environment or health or for animals or a mixture of all three. We, you know, for me personally, and it was the reason I started Meat Free Week as well, it's wanting to make this world better. And not everybody understands that drive. You know, I think that that's can be hard to explain to people. So I would like to see more vegans in business, men and women, people of color, like, you know, really, simply because I think that we come from a place that is about compassion and kindness and wanting to make the world a better place. And the world needs more of that. I mean, that is the bottom line. Like, I think that we understand now that our relationship with the natural world is fundamentally broken, and we are seeing that. Obviously COVID-19 is, gosh, if we didn't need a slap in the face, that is it. But you know, the bushfires that were raging in Australia and in Brazil with the Amazon, the school strikes that were happening. So people are wanting change, and I do think that we're going to see this with millennials and Gen Z pushing and not accepting what perhaps my generation thought was okay, or just didn't, you know, knew it was wrong but didn't know how to fight it. So yeah, I think it's, we have, I think as vegan women, as vegans and as vegan women, we have a really big role to play in the years ahead in terms of how the world is shaped commercially. Yeah. And
absolutely, yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Thank you. Jess, do you want to add anything?
I've just listened to 4 incredibly intelligent, articulate women say everything that needs to be said, and I'm going to leave it with them.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Cool. Wonderful. So what advice would you give to vegan women, you know, whether it's younger women or, you know, vegan women who are older and looking to perhaps change or pivot, buzzword of 2020, who want to combine their passions or their, you know, their politics, whether that's, you know, environment, obviously around animals, particularly around veganism or, you know, animal advocacy. They really want to combine. And I know someone already touched on that about sometimes it was expected you I think it was Dalal mentioned, you have your corporate or your job, and then you do your kind of passions or your activism outside of that. But now we're seeing more people wanting to combine the two. So I'm just curious, what advice would you give to vegan women wanting to combine their career or their business with their passions? I'm going to start with Curlew Sue, because you've kind of done that. So I think we all have, but yeah, talk us through that.
I would say do your research first of all, because you can combine your passion with business, but you have to make sure what you want to do is a viable business and that you can make money to survive from it. Is there a gap in the market? Is this a need that, you know, a product or a service that people need? And also, if you're going to start a business, what are the different income streams you can have for that business? Because particularly now with COVID-19, a lot of businesses have had to think differently. So where they may only have had one stream of getting an income, they've now had to think, right, what else do I do? What do I do next? So think of the income streams and learn, a bit like how Jex said she did a course on vegan interior design. Do a course, learn, get the qualifications, and also always think of your business in a way that you want it to look polished and professional, because sometimes with vegans, we can be focused on the product and on the service and not necessarily the presentation as much, but look at how do you present it, because there's still a bit of a stereotype on, oh, the vegan looking one or the vegetarian looking one, meaning it looks kind of frumpy and dowdy. Move beyond that, make it look amazing so that people can't eat. What I like is when people say, oh, actually, it doesn't even look vegan or vegetarian. So this is my kids' cookbook. And the first thing people said is, oh, it doesn't even look like a vegan cookbook. And I take that as a compliment, because the stereotype is, oh, if it's a vegan cookbook, it's going to have a boring picture on the front and black and white pictures and, you know, some kind of stuff like that. And also think big, think big. The sky's the limit. There's nothing to stop you. And also get advice from other people, make friends with other people who are in business and learn and grow. That's what I would say.
Lovely. That's great advice, because obviously a lot more, I guess I put competition in air quotes, because obviously if it's in veganism and it's a vegan business, it's not really competition, because, you know, we're on that shared mission. But, you know, a lot of people are wanting to get into, you know, these either running their own business or working in organizations where they can do that. So that's really good advice there from Sue. I'd like to come to Dalal about, because I know you touched on the fact that, you know, previously it was a case of, you know, you had to do your job and your kind of passions or your activism outside of that. Are you any tips, because you've basically managed to merge both of yours in what you do now, so curious as to what advice and tips you might have for other people wanting to sort of follow in your footsteps, not necessarily in a VC firm, but just simply, you know, doing work that fulfills your purpose and your passion as well.
Absolutely. It definitely wasn't easy. I have to say that it was very difficult to kind of jump and switch careers, you know, from a scientific base towards, you know, a financial background, and then of course kind of going very niche into, you know, just focusing on food technology investments, and then, you know, sort of alternative protein, which is, you know, only vegan products. So actually, I do a lot of advisory work for the youth in Singapore. So something I always tell, you know, both women and men is it's really important to build a foundation. And I totally align with, you know, Curlew Sue. It's really important that you're not just a woman, you're not just a vegan woman, but you're, let's say, you know, a vegan chemical engineer. You're a vegan brand practitioner or marketing expert. You're a vegan financial analyst. You can't just be bound by one definition, but you have to show that vegans can be anything, and that can be super specialized. And that will basically just give you more clout, give you more of an impact, so that when you are, let's say, ready to embark on a career, be it starting your own business or working for a large corporation, you can really add value and change people's perspectives as well on what this means, right? I mean, of course, it's amazing that now we can make this let's say into a profit, you know, making a profit out of our mission, out of our, you know, our vision for a better and kinder future. But, you know, it's very important that we start very early to kind of build that credibility, build the foundation properly. And I was going to say, like, my personal journey, it has been very tough, because I think as women, we just not take it seriously enough. Everyone will just think, oh, you're good at one thing and that's it. You can't really jump over and, you know, start something else, or you can't be a consultant. You know, and I've personally, let's say, you know, had many doors closed, And also I've been told many times to just do things for free. And I'll be quite honest, you know, my shift, sort of coming into this sector, I did so much freelance work. And I did freelance work for almost 2 years to kind of successfully make that switch and move. So I think it's very important that people just keep trying, keep pushing. But it's super important. You know, I'm very lucky that I have my traditional background. So whatever happens, I can always go back to a traditional sector. But, you know, just make sure that you build that, you know, let's say very strong credibility. You know, I think that's my advice for vegan women.
Wonderful, thank you. Jess, you started the cruelty-free shop, like you said, kind of so that you could easily do your own shopping and didn't have to constantly look at the labels. So I guess that's a really great example of combining, you know, creating a business out of something you're passionate about. I know you're a big animal advocate as well. So what advice would you give to vegan women wanting to start their own business?
Decide what you want to do and just go for it. Just do it. Something that I think a lot of people get bogged down in is doing a massive amount of research and going, well, I'm not going to do it until I've got all the information. But I think you need to have a sort of 80% rule. Get 80% of the information and then make your decision. Because if you wait to get 100% of the information, you're never going to do anything. So I think that there has to be a point where you just say, just go for it. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Failure is not necessarily a bad thing. Every time you make a mistake or you fail in something, you learn and become better at it the next time around. And I guess my next piece of advice would be seek support and advice from other women, vegan women in business, because there's something really wonderful that I've found in our community, and that is that vegans are very supportive of each other. And adding another level to that, women are very supportive of each other. So vegan women, you know, when I meet another vegan woman in business, I'm so excited to meet them, you know, and I want them to do really well. And I think that most of us are like that. So I would say reach out to other vegan women in business and you'll be amazed at how supportive they'll be, the advice you'll get, and be open to that advice, you know, try and put the emotion aside and listen to the advice you get from people. And yeah, it's always blows me away how supportive other vegan business people are. It's really lovely. And I don't imagine you see that in many industries. You know, there's not the competition that you see. So, yeah.
Great. And there's, of course, there's lots of resources, excuse me now. A lot more resources now available for vegan business and entrepreneurs, business owners and entrepreneurs, because the more products and services available. So there's certainly a lot of research that people can get hold of. Wonderful. And Melissa, again, you're sort of similar to Jess. You started up the website to make it easy for other people to get vegan products because you found it quite difficult to transition yourself. So coming from someone who's worked in the corporate sector, you come from working in magazine publishing to running your own digital website. What advice would you give to vegan women wanting to do something similar?
Oh, look, I think it's sort of pretty much the points I had have been covered. But look, what I'd say is that it takes, sometimes, what's that old saying? It will take, you earn half as much and it will take twice as long. So I think that just being prepared, like I always have a thing of what gets me out of bed, because I know that you're going to have tough days. And I think it's really easy when you go into anything. The fun bit is actually at the beginning, and it's exciting. And when you're building a brand and everything's great, right? And then you start to hit, you know, you maybe don't hit the milestones that you thought you were going to hit, or, you know, in the case with me, you know, there's been some partnership issues, and it's like, okay, I'd say if you're going into business with someone, understand what you're both bringing to that partnership. Be really clear about what your exit strategy is. If you're doing it on your own, what have you got in place to support yourself? And I think the comments made by Jessica are really great in the sense that that network, when I started the vegan company, I didn't actually know that many vegans, and it's, you know, it's a couple of years on, I just feel like I've got the most incredible support network that's been built. And it's exactly true, actually, by reaching out to people. I've not really ever felt this sort of, particularly coming from cutthroat publishing, women's fashion magazines. So I would say be prepared that you're going to need resilience. And when things get tough, you got to almost expect it. I think that it's easy to forget that there are going to be some bad days, and what are you going to do, or bad periods. whether that's emotional, financial, what's in your back pocket, what's in your toolkit to get you through that.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you, Melissa. And Jex, what advice would you like to give to vegan women to combine their career or their work or their business with their passions?
I think you've got to really be prepared to go against the norm and be comfortable with that. You know, you're going to be confronted time and time again with people who, you know, justify why they're not vegan and why, you know, what you're saying is all wishy-washy when it's not. Which is their issues, but you've got to stand firm in what you believe in, really, and, you know, keep pushing. And just because someone isn't vegan, or you just haven't got that thought process at the moment, doesn't mean they won't eventually get there. So still engage with them, but also engage with those who are already there. And you know, it's a different kind of style, so you've got to position yourself so you can sell in 2 different ways. But yeah, that's my advice, really. Just be comfortable and happy to go against the grain time and time again.
And I know Melissa touched on resilience, and it's interesting. When I wrote my book, Vegan Ventures: Start and Grow an Ethical Business, like one of the questions I asked over 60 vegan entrepreneurs is, what quality do you need to be in business? And actually, resilience was like the #1 thing that people said. So, and I'm curious with you, Jex, because I know you said like people aren't expecting you, like, one, you know, as a woman, and second, as a woman of color. Have you ever been like, maybe like someone's potentially hired you or said, oh, this sounds great, and then when they found out that you're either a woman or a woman of color, like, rejected you? And if so, how have you handled that?
Yes, so yeah, they see maybe background or something, or they'll see, you know, where I've come from work wise, just hearing my voice or something, and then it's like, oh, okay. And you can pick it up. You know, I'm very big on reading people's faces, so I pick up really quickly. And yeah, I just like, well, that is it. I'm comfortable with who I am, and if you don't want to work with me, that's fine, because I wouldn't particularly want to work with you anyway. So yeah, you know, but it happens in different ways. As a woman, it happens not so much in interior design space, because people expect that it's going to be a woman anyway a lot of the time. But as a Black woman, there aren't many Black interior designers that are showcased. There are quite a lot of us, but we're kind of hidden in the mix. Even though we obviously stand out quite a bit, but yeah, people haven't seemed to notice us. But you've got to, you know, just be happy and comfortable with who you are.
Yeah, it's that self-confidence thing, isn't it? That came up in the panel that we discussed yesterday.
Expect it, really. People are going to say, "Oh no, I don't want to work with you because of this and that and the other," and that's fine. You know, that's not my ideal customer anyway. Because you know, interiors is a very personal kind of work, especially when you're working in residential interiors. You know a lot of ins and outs of a person. And more than most people, you know, a builder might know like the outside, but I know what's in the knicker drawer. I know everything. So, you know, if you're not comfortable just seeing my face, you're not going to be comfortable knowing that I know your brand of bras. So.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've noticed we've got a question coming from Erica. She says, thanks for another wonderful conversation today, ladies. I assume you're on yesterday's panel as well, Erica. Thank you for joining us again. She's saying, Erica's asking, does anyone have any advice about leading a team as a vegan woman? I recently left a similarly toxic company like what you've discussed, and I now have an exciting new team to manage and want to make sure they're engaged and motivated to keep pushing. Oh, I love that. Congratulations, Erica, on your new position. Dalal, you're heading a team at the moment. What advice would you have for Erica?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and also congratulations. I think, at least for me, I think the most important thing as a leader is, you know, adaptability and communication. So I think, you know, we have to make sure that we are able to wear multiple hats, and we're able to do the dirty work as well. I think it's, you know, very important that we can show everyone that's working with us that we're fully capable, that we don't have that arrogance that this is something I won't do, or I won't book my own meetings, etc. I think having that basic sort of, let's say, you know, understanding as well as respect for everyone that's working in your organization, from, let's say, the most senior to the most junior, is so important. And I think, of course, you know, just showing that, you know, you know, I guess that having those I would say, like, you know, qualities are then going to showcase to whoever is working with you that, you know, a vegan leader is like everyone else, that we have dignity, we have pride, we have respect for everyone, you know, despite their nature, their mission, their creed, their culture. And, you know, I would just say that, you know, naturally it will build the curiosity within your team to then ask you about your mission, to ask you about your vision and statement. You don't really need to push it over onto anyone. And, you know, I'm just very happy to be able to work with such, you know, let's say, you know, respectable, you know, decent, as well as, you know, very generous and kind people, that, you know, understand the value of our work. And, you know, at the same time, we just have to make sure that we value them just as much.
Great, thank you. I'd like to come to Curly Sue, because that story you told, you know, earlier, where they assumed you were a PA and you were actually. Any advice for Erica about how to, because how did you turn that around, like from being assumed to be the PA and then it's like, oh, actually no, she's, you know, in charge of us. So how did you go about leading the team and getting the, obviously the respect you deserve, and to, you know, to reverse those stereotypes? And any advice for Erica on how to lead the team as a vegan woman?
I'll be really honest. I'm a practicing Christian, so I always try to practice what I believe. And everybody deserves a second chance. So as much as she annoyed me and she upset me by assuming that I was the PA, I just thought there's an opportunity here to rise above it, because the additional thing being a woman of color in a relatively high position in an organization is people are always watching your every move and how you, what you do, what decisions and choices you make. Her and I became almost like best friends, because I just thought, you know, I need to show her that what she did, the assumption she made was unfair. So she learned from it, because I understand when people don't understand, but what I need is for them to understand. So if that makes sense, yes. So I didn't hold it against her. I didn't bear a grudge about it. So as a Christian, I wouldn't bear a grudge. So I didn't bear a grudge about it. I just carried on as normal, because she was like falling over herself thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? And I just thought, okay, that's fine. I said, okay, so where's the stationery cupboard? Well, you know, just carried on as normal. And then we did have a conversation, and I said, yes, you did really upset me when you made that assumption. And you know why you made that assumption. But you know what? Every day is a brand new day. Let's draw a line under this. And going forward, I don't have any animosity towards you. So I just left it at that. And with regards leading a team, again, as a woman of color, people can either think you're a pushover or think you're going to be really hard and aggressive in everything that you do. So again, I'm not an aggressive person in that way at all. So I always try to be fair. So I always try to look at it the other way. If they were my boss, what would I want them to do? And I always make a point of telling them that. I always try to think of it the other way around. If you were I and I were you, what would I want me to do? What would I want you to do? I said, look, I'm firm, fair, and friendly. I'm firm in this is what needs to get done. I'm fair. I'm going to do what is right. And I'm friendly. My door is, my virtual door in an open plan office is always open. You can always come and talk to me. I don't want you to be afraid to speak to me. So it's about being fair and friendly. And also remember, I always remember they're a human being first and an employee second. So what does the human need first and foremost? And that's how I look at it.
I love that. I really love that. And I love that whole kind of being the example, and how you, instead of just punishing her and perhaps fulfilling, you know, any stereotypes, that you literally modeled, you know, that. I think that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Some great advice. I hope that's been helpful for you, Erica. Jess, you have got staff. You've got various staff in your different regions. So you've got staff in Melbourne, staff in Sydney. You're not always there to oversee them directly. So any tips? What advice could you offer, Erica, on leading a team?
Two things. One is just make sure that they understand that, I know it's a cliche, but there's no such thing as a stupid question. Make sure that your staff know that you're always there to answer questions if they need to ask them. And when they ask them, even if they are not, you know, obvious questions. Don't make them feel stupid asking them. You want to always make sure that that communication line is open. And secondly, I would say micromanaging is the worst possible thing you can do. You have to trust that people can know what to do and that they can do their jobs. You need to give them a task and let them go away and try. And maybe they'll fail, but you know, they need to feel that you trust them. I think the only ever work situation I've been in that I quit was when I was micromanaged. And, you know, I'm sure my boss didn't mean to do it, but it just made me feel like they thought I couldn't do my job. And I never ever want to make anyone feel like that. So yeah, trust, delegate, and make sure you have open lines of communication.
I love that. That's a really good point about the micromanaging. You sort of feel like, and I was chuckling when you said that, I chuckled because I work sometimes like with my partner Tracy, and like sometimes, because you know, with technical things, like sometimes I will kind of go to take over and she'll say, stop micromanaging me. So I was kind of laughing, but I get what you're saying.
It's really hard not to.
Yeah, because you just want to fix it forward, or you want to get it done. But you're absolutely right. You know, no one's going to learn anything unless they,
and it undermines them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Tracy's going to love this when she watches the recording. Jex and Melissa, did you guys, either of you would like to add anything on leading a team?
Do you want to go first?
I was just going to say, no, I think that covered, I agree with everything that's been said.
Cool. Jex?
I was just going to add just to know what your missions are and then relay those to you're working with. I don't necessarily see them as working under, but working with you, alongside you, which I think changes dynamics in itself anyway. And just, you know, be clear in the first place of what your missions are, and then telling them so they can uphold them, even if it's not, you know, necessarily their lifestyle, but at least they have that level of respect to carry that on, because they are representing the business at the end of the day.
Yeah, fantastic. Wonderful advice there. I hope that's been helpful for you, Erica. And yeah, good luck in your new position. That's really exciting. We've got, I think this is a comment from Ciao Bella. I'm assuming you're based in Italy. Ciao Bella. Thank you for such inspirational contributions. I have an idea for a business, environmental, and this year has been so encouraging. I'm going to go for it. I've been vegan for 35 years. Wow. Love to everyone. Alison. Oh, I see. Alison, that was your handle. Your name is Chabert. It's Alison. Thank you so much for sharing that, Alison. How exciting. And absolutely, I think, as our panelists have said, you know, do go for it. So that's wonderful. Do feel free. We have got a little bit more time. So do feel free to type in your questions. You know, take advantage of the fact that we've got these amazing women here with such a breadth of expertise and experience. So do carry on with your questions. So I'm curious, we've talked about resilience and some of the qualities that you need, you know, to be successful in business. What about on those days when, and I know particularly for entrepreneurs, you know, things are going to go wrong. They just will. You know, with the best will in the world, things can really just, you know, fall to pieces. And sometimes you just wonder, oh, is it all worth it? You know, do I need to kind of give up? And I guess at the same, you know, with when you're working at a job, sometimes you're just going to have really bad days and you think, am I in the right, you know, am I doing the right thing? What should I do? How do you handle that? How do you kind of keep yourself going, keep yourself on track? Melissa?
Okay, yeah, well, look, that's a great question for me, because that has certainly been something that's come up for me recently. I had a health issue that came up earlier this year, an autoimmune, and it brought into a question about what I was doing and how I was living my life. And, you know, truthfully, like, you know, you get to those days where you go, actually, I could just walk away, I need time out. And I think it comes back to being very clear about, I mean, for me, I feel really clear on my purpose in life. And, you know, that is to actually make the world a better place for animals. And so for me, I come back to that. On another note with that, with my health, it's about, I really recognized that my self-care was lacking. So I was putting, I'm a mum, I've got a property with animals. And so I realized that I was constantly putting out fires. And I really, this is going back to that COVID thing, I think for me it was a bit of a resetting. So I've started meditating daily, which has been quite transformative. You hear the science about it, and I'm always like, I'm too busy to meditate, I don't have time, and I've got, that it has been great. And the other thing that on a practical level, I'm involved with a charity called Till the Cows Come Home, and they rescue unwanted farm animals and place them. I'm on the board of that charity, and we've actually just recently, as in a few weeks ago, we've started fostering baby calves. And I can, at the time, friends and family who know how busy I am with the business and life in general were like, are you just mental? Are you crazy? And yet what I knew about myself is that I needed a way to ground myself and to remind me of why I do what I do in the most, and that honestly, when you're there literally saving the life of a baby calf rescued from the dairy industry, which is exactly what it is, there is nothing that's more grounding and motivating for me than that practical experience. So the short answer to that long-winded description is to get really clear on why you do what you do. Because I've had to really dig deep these last 3 months. I've probably had some of the hardest 3 months ever. And just the meditation, self-care, and a practical application that's really ground me into why I do what I do has been critical for me.
Brilliant. I love that. That's really great advice. Dalal, what do you do when things are going to hell in a handbasket, and what do you do to cope?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with what Melissa said. I think, it's definitely, maybe just as women as well, like we're always trying to prove to ourselves that we can do everything. And we never admit to anyone that we're exhausted, we're tired, we're on the verge of collapsing. Like I think that's something that is really something I've had to learn the hard way, kind of reaching that low point where your body just shuts down. I think something that I will always tell people, from my experience is like, just don't be ashamed to tell your employer or tell anyone that you're not okay, that, you need to take a break. I think if your employer does not respect that, or if that compromises your career, then you shouldn't be working for that company, full stop. So I think, we're always going to hit, a low point, have, of course, bad days, and investment doesn't go through, or whatever reason. I think, we just have to learn how to let go, reset, and just go back into things that will remove that negativity. Personally, I try to just go to the gym, meet up with friends, or even play a video game now that we're living in quarantine times. So just do something to reset, and hopefully that will make whatever bad situation you had at least look a bit better, and then you can find the ways to pick up the pieces.
Great, thank you. That's great. Curlew Sue, what do you do? Because you do so many things. You're an author, a speaker, a consultant. You're doing lots of things, and I can imagine, things don't, like you said with your Amazon, Prime thing. You didn't admit, you had to kind of go back to, the beginning. So how do you cope in those kind of situations?
I'm very good at overloading myself, so I have to monitor myself. I'm very good at thinking, okay, I have 50 things on my to-do list today and all are going to get done. Obviously, it doesn't get done. So I monitor myself, and I try to keep a day book, a bit like when I worked in PR agencies, of what I get done in a day. It doesn't always work, but what I'm doing in a day. And I sometimes check in with my sister and say, is this too much to do in one day? And things like that. So I have to monitor myself. But also sometimes if I get fed up or I'm feeling a bit down, I think sometimes you need a day off. You just have a breather. You just sit, eat vegan cookies and watch Netflix or something, go for a walk, or just take a day out, because I think a lot. So I'm always in my head. So sometimes I think I need to play Candy Crush, or I need to, do something that doesn't require, thinking too much, just switch off for the day, or just have a day. I'll just go shopping. It's not as much fun now as it used to be, but hopefully those days will come back. I went to Regent Street, all masks and gloves and everything, and I just did a little bit of shopping, went to Whole Foods, looked at what new vegan stuff they have, and that was kind of like a day out for me. And then I came back, and I always try to you have to look after your mental health, and you have to look after you as well. So sometimes I think there's a culture in the UK of if you work long hours, that's really good. It actually isn't. It's not productive. So it's looking after yourself, exercising, eat well, sleep well, drink water, you know, doing all the things that you should do to remain healthy, and being around people who are positive, people who are not, who don't want you to do well, because as everybody knows, not everybody wants you to be a success. So, you know, keep those people to a minimum, but kind of gravitate towards the people who want you to do well and people who will help you move forward as well. So main thing is to be positive, and if you have a bad day, it's just a bad day, it's not a bad forever. So that's how you have to look at it.
I love that. And just following on from what you said about, you know, the eating the cookies and the watching the Netflix and not feeling guilty about that. Because I know sometimes even I will do that. Like I'll be just like, right, I need a time or an afternoon or an evening. Usually, like, you know, I'll usually have done like a good, you know, a full day's work, like during the daytime. I've maybe even done a little bit more till about 8 o'clock at night. And then there's just times I'm just like, and I'll sit on the couch and I'll watch maybe 4 or 5 episodes or something. But sometimes then I'll think, I'll feel a bit guilty, like, oh, I've just wasted that time, you know, binge watch. So it's like getting over that. If you're doing that every single day, obviously, you know, and you're not proceeding, that's one thing. But I think for every now and then, it's like, if that helps you to decompress, which it does for me, you know, a good British drama, you know, something, you know, detective thing, whatever, you know, I love all that. I think it's to do that and to not feel guilty about it. Because I'm sure as women, we probably do that more. And I don't like to gender stereotype, but I would hedge a bet that more women will kind of feel guilty about taking that time out. And you're right, we need to normalize that, to say, yeah, it's fine to do those things, whatever works for you. Well, yeah, wonderful, thank you. Jess, what do you do? Because, you know, this was a new business for you. I know you've been running the cruelty-free shop for a while, but particularly with the physical stores, you know, they've been going just a few years now, whereas your online store has been going a lot longer. And, you know, it can be stressful, you know, things gone. You've had a fire to deal with. Your Melbourne, never this was before even COVID hit. You had a fire in Melbourne, which must have been incredibly stressful. How do you cope?
I'd blocked that out.
I'm sorry.
You traumatized me again. Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, our shop burned down. That was quite an experience. In fact, yeah, that was probably the worst time. You have to be kind to yourself. You have to know that sometimes you'll just come home and want to sit rocking in a corner and have about 50 wines. But as Melissa said earlier, I do exactly what she does. I remind myself why I'm doing it. And, you know, I could sit in that corner and rock for a few days, or I could get out there and do something for animals. And everything I do, the whole purpose of my business is to save animals. And if I don't do it, who's going to? So, you know, you do have to indulge yourself a little bit. I think it's okay to give yourself some downtime and like you said, watch some crap television, I don't know, go out for a run, whatever. You need to indulge yourself when you're feeling bad. I don't think it's healthy just to push through. I think you need to have that downtime. But once you've had it, then just remember why you're doing it and get right back out there and keep doing it, because no one else is going to.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And Jex, what advice do you have? What do you do when it's all just, going to pot?
So ever since I was about 7 or 8, I've done this literally every day. I just spend like 5 minutes thinking about all the event, you know, all the possibilities what happen in the world, whether it's happy or sad, and then put myself in that and realize actually I've got it pretty good. It's not that bad. So, you know, from people dying and suffering and stuff, I'm not going through any of those situations. So that kind of just brings me back to a place of being really humble. And also just doing something what I have no idea what I'm doing. So for me, it's doing my allotment. I'm very much a nature girl, to be out in nature, but give me some dirt and I have no clue. But it's great because it makes you realise, you know, mistakes happen because you don't know what you're doing, you know. So yeah, it's a great way to just ease yourself back into just being a human. Yeah,
for sure. And I love what you said about the excuse me, the gratitude as well. because, and it's fine to, you know, acknowledge, you know, things are getting on top of you and everything, but then to kind of put it into perspective and yeah, look at the positive and what you know, what's really going well, can help to at least balance you out, and then you do the self-care as well combined with that. So I love what you said about that. Nishma has got a question. She's saying, being self-employed can be isolating. Are there any forums where you bounce your ideas or thoughts? Well, there's certainly Facebook. I can quickly jump in there. There's certainly some Facebook groups, Nishma, like the vegan, I think it's called Vegan Professionals Network, which is for vegan, basically people, whether you're employed or whether you're a vegan business owner or entrepreneur. That's quite an active group. I'm one of the co-admins on that, and that's an international group. There's, I think there's LinkedIn groups as well, like for vegan professionals. There's specific groups for countries. Like I think there's one, I think Nishma, you're based in the UK. You know, there's places like Vegan Businesses UK, there's Vegan Businesses Australia, etc. So I think maybe join those kind of groups can be a good thing, where you can, you know, post a question and get some feedback on. I don't know if anyone wants to particularly jump in on that. Just no? Okay, so basically, yeah, I think online there's quite a few resources, Nishma, to go on, whether it's Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups, particularly spring to mind. So that's great. So we're coming up to literally to the finish now. We've probably got about 5 minutes. If anyone's got any last minute questions, now is the time to type them in. If we don't have any questions, I'm just going to ask our panelists just to go through just briefly and tell us what have been the key things that you've learned as a vegan woman in business. Start with Curly Sue.
I'm going to be really honest. One of the things I learned early on in business is, I think I exhibited at VegFest years ago. It was one of the first places I exhibited as a vegan business person. And prior to that, I did think that vegans were kind of the crystal powered, tofu wearing, Birkenstock wearing, kind of, you know, with strange views of the world, those kinds of people. And I was standing at my booth at VegFest and I looked and I thought, they're everyone from everywhere. There's no stereotype, because I was trying to kind of come up with the kind of customer persona of a typical vegan, and there isn't, which is great. There's vegans anywhere and everywhere, and as you go around to all the different stands at VegFest, you just think, well, these people are anyone, everyone, you, me, people I come across, people I don't come across, and that was a valuable lesson for me. I can't just pigeonhole a vegan and think, okay, they're the Birkenstock wearer kind of person who only eats tofu on Wednesday, and, you know, things like that. They're anyone and everyone. That's what I learned.
Oh, I love that. We certainly are. I mean, we're such a diverse group. You know, I love sparkle and bling and everything. You know, we're just so very, very different. I love that. And I think there's not enough of that. I'm just going to put that out there, as this is a business panel, and there's not enough sparkle and bling in vegan fashion. So I want to see more of it. There we go. Melissa, what lessons have you learned?
Look, two things. I think I saw this great quote. It was actually on Instagram, and actually that's another great place, just going back to that last question that came up, that if you're on Instagram and you follow a whole lot of vegan businesses or people, and you can reach out via direct message to them. So that's another resource I should have just mentioned. But there was a great thing I saw, that if you're even if you're starting over, you're not starting from scratch. You are starting from experience. And I saw that today, and I just thought, you know, you don't always get things right the first time. What you think you know as you go along, and if you're learning on the job, or, you know, you suddenly go, wow, I wish I'd known that 2 years ago or a year ago. And I think the other thing I would say is that there's room enough for all of us. Like, I think that sometimes online, not so much in my personal experience, but in online, I can see that vegans can quite often attack other vegans for either not being vegan enough, or not getting it right, and I'm always a bit surprised by it, because it's like, you know what, we're all fighting the good fight. So I believe there's room for all of us. The more the merrier. I welcome anyone in this space. It's like, I will always support anyone that's wanting to be in this space. Because I just think that we're in it for the right reasons. So yeah, I think that's probably what I've learned, that there's room, there's the more of us the merrier. That's basically what I believe. And that's, you can't say that for every industry, but I really believe that for us. We are growing, veganism we know is a growing trend, and so that the more of us that can cater to that market and to share our experience and make the world a kinder, better, more compassionate place for the planet and the animals we share it with, it's a win for everybody.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And that was another question that I asked people when I wrote the book, and it was about collaboration, like collaboration over competition. Don't be afraid if people are coming even into the same place that you're playing. You know, that's a good thing, because I think no one business can, you know, serve everybody. We've got so much work to do that, you know, there's more than enough work for all of us. So I love that. Thank you, Melissa. Jex, what have been the key lessons you've learned?
That, yeah, we just, even as vegans, we're not all on, you know, the same wavelengths. People just don't, you know, especially with the interior world, people just haven't even thought about it, to be honest. You know, I think it's obvious when you're talking about like a sofa or something, that people are not thinking about what goes into the whole process of making a sofa and the glues and stuff like that. And it's, you know, and it's just to give everyone a break that, you know, you don't know. I don't know everything. I'm learning every day and discovering new things. I had no idea mattresses had milk in, but they do. But, you know, it's a whole process, and it's an ongoing thing.
Fantastic. Dalal, what have been the key lessons you've learned as a vegan woman in business?
Yeah, I love all the insights that we've been hearing from Curly, Sue, from Melissa and Dex. I think, you know, I totally agree. I think as a scientist coming into this space as well, you know, we're always skeptical of anything that isn't backed by data. So I think, you know, kind of the original, let's say, stereotype of what a vegan is kind of mission driven, but a bit reactionary and not really kind of fact checking or maybe even manipulating some of the facts at the time. So I would say that I'm really happy that, you know, nowadays you have a lot of, let's say, collaborations between advocacy groups, entrepreneurs, scientists, and a lot of great think tanks. You know, I do want to give a shout out to a couple of organizations that I think, you know, people listening should follow. The Good Food Institute have been tremendously supportive at, you know, bridging the gap between all these different facets of, you know, as I mentioned, advocacy, entrepreneurship, and also like, I would say more traditional corporations as well. And bringing in, you know, the legal sort of like legal regulatory advisors as well as scientists to help showcase how technology can lead the way at creating more, you know, advanced alternative protein solutions. So I think, you know, that's really amazing. And yeah, you know, I think, you know, we just have to remember that, you know, we have to be more inclusive and be open-minded to different thoughts and views, but we can eventually all work together. And I just want to say, like, you know, last thing, something that I really learned is communication is so important, and I still need a lot of work at perfecting that. But, you know, coming from, I would say, like a scientific background, I think a lot of people will agree, you know, we're not trained to be bold and flashy and use that to kind of, you know, I guess, promote ourselves. And, you know, at business, it's the total opposite. People who are the most boldest, charismatic, you know, will get all the funding, will get, you know, that's you know, support moving forward. So I think changing that mindset, trying to show that, you know, you can be flashy, you know, and come off, you know, as strong and confident, and it doesn't mean that you're arrogant or that your product is not worthy. I think we need to do that more as women, as vegan women, so that we can really make an impact on the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That topic came up in yesterday's panel about finding your voice as a leader in the animal advocacy and vegan movements. And somebody, I think it was Nishma actually, that asked the question, you know, sometimes as with women, it can feel like when you're putting yourself forward, it can feel like you're boasting. And so we had, you know, we kind of worked on that to say, well, that's not necessarily the case. But, you know, if you, just by saying, you know, yes, we can do that job, it doesn't mean we're boasting. We've got to be more confident about putting ourselves forward and not worrying that, you know, it's seen as a negative thing. So yeah, thank you, Dalal. And finally, Jess, what have been the key lessons that you've learned as a vegan entrepreneur?
A few things. One is don't read the comments in vegan Facebook groups because it's just depressing. One thing that I've learned is that you can learn something from every single person you talk to. So talk about your business to everyone who'll listen, because it's incredible the pearls of wisdom you get from the most unusual places. And I always find that anyone I talk to, I always come away with some new bit of information or a new perspective. I think get out there and talk to anyone. It's amazing what you can learn. And lastly, be nice to each other. At the end of the day, we're all trying to make the world a better place. So let's all just be nice to each other about it. Don't judge anyone, because, you know, we all ate meat and did horrible things at some point in our lives. And this is, you know, part of our path, and everyone's on a different part of that path. So be nice to people and be supportive. And I don't know, that's all. Make the world a better place.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think that's a really perfect upbeat note to end on. And if you would like to, for those of you who have asked questions, thank you so much. And for those of you watching the recording, if you go to the VegFest UK website, if you want to find out more about all these amazing women, you can click on their speaker profile, which will give you more details and links to their website. As I mentioned at the start, you can find out more about the Vegan Women's Leadership Network by going to our virtual stand here at VegFest UK, and that's got links to the website, which is veganwomensleadershipnetwork.com, and obviously invite you to join us. There are monthly and annual options, and we are growing, and it's a really supportive environment for vegan women leaders, to help you become a leader in whatever field that is, whether that's in business or outside of that. Again, I'd like to thank VegFest UK. Thank you so much for giving us these 2 panels over the couple of days. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've absolutely loved speaking with all the women. Thank you so much to all our panelists today, Curly Sue, Jessica, Melissa, Jex and Dalal. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I love what you're doing, and I hope you're all as inspired as I am by these wonderful women. Thank you so much for joining me today and joining us today.
Hey, Katrina, thanks ever so much. Thank you, our panelists. I've been quietly listening in, and, you know, credit to all of you, because it's such a tough time to be in business right now. We're all faced with some hurdles, but I know that, you know, women particularly have been faced with hurdles that we need to remove. We want to inspire confidence and remove some of those barriers. And we've all got a part to play in that. But particularly being in business right now, because, you know, some of us don't even know if we'll be in business next week. It's got to a point now globally where we will unfortunately see a lot of casualties over the next 6 months. We've seen plenty. We're just on that tipping point, especially in the UK, where it is going to now slide. And it's really tough to see good people going under, and seeing, you know, lifelong businesses just come to a halt. And the necessity for a network like this has now become even more essential. And the support that something like the Women's Leadership Network can give now within the vegan community is absolutely essential. And what I'm seeing and have seen over this last 4 decades is a whole growth in women leaders now coming to the forefront. So people like me are not really that needed anymore. It's an absolutely fantastic site. And it's in good hands, I can see. We've got some fantastic women leaders all over the globe coming through. I for one, am absolutely thrilled to see it. And to play a tiny little part in the launch of what is going to grow and grow is an honour. So on that note, I should say thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, but particularly Katrina, because you really have given some terrific input for this VegFest UK Summerfest Online 2020. And long may that continue. And if you've been watching, yeah, do go and join the network, go and join in the chat. And again, thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.